Alrighty, welcome back to Modern Man, where we exist to rediscover and redeem the heart of man in the modern world. My name is Sam Halligan, your host today for this episode of Modern Man, along with my co-hosts Noah Gilchrist and Brad Piron. Fellas, how you doing?
Good.
Feeling good.
College
Feeling
football's
really good.
around the corner. Pretty happy.
I went to a high
Started
school
getting
football
into
game this weekend.
That's what I'm
Man,
talking about. I got into Premier League, English Premier League this weekend. So
who'd you watch?
Leeds United. Well, I watched a couple games actually, but Leeds United is my team. I have a good friend who I don't know,
Nice.
Sam, if you've met, but Brad's met, who is from England. And
Yeah,
his team
you've
is
talked
Leeds
about this guy
United.
before. Yeah, he's a big rugby guy too, right?
Yep. So he came to the States, became a diehard Ohio State fan for me. So I figured I owe him this much. So I'm getting into Premier League. World Cup inspired it in me. And then I watched a show called Welcome to Wrexham, which is a really, really good show. And then I watched another show that I'm in the midst of still called Ted Lasso. I'm obsessed with it. So I'm like, you know what? Premier League. It's gonna be my when everything's dead in August sport.
Very good.
It's a good sport, man.
But,
good sport.
Yeah, it's great to hear.
sick.
Good. Well, if you're joining us for the first time, or if you have not yet subscribed, liked, or followed Modern Man, could you please just do us a favor and take a look? And if you haven't, go ahead and click the like button or the subscribe or the follow button. It helps us to increase the message and get it out to more people. And we're passionate about this message to be able to reach the heart of men. We are passionate and devout Christians and really want to help people come into a relationship with God in and through this as well. So before we kind of get into it, I actually want us to pray to kind of get into this episode, and then we'll get into the content. So let's pray in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord God, we thank you and praise you for the gift of this time together. We thank you for Modern Man and the mission of this podcast. And I just thank you for all of our listeners. I thank you for everyone who is following along, whether it's their first time or whether they've been following for the last couple of years. We just pray for blessing upon this conversation. Help it to glorify you in all that we do. And we pray this in your most holy name, Jesus. Amen. In the name of the Father and the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Well, so we are kind of going into this episode, which is known as our After Action Report, will be referred to as our AAR throughout the conversation here. And the After Action Report really goes to kind of address the end of the month, looking back at what happened, kind of what was the plan, what actually happened, and what did we learn from the episode. So at this point, this is going to be released at the end of August. And we have had 3 different episodes that have kind of covered a variety of topics. One was a long form interview led by Noah. We had a couple guests on. We had Gabe Gessler and Conall Hughes, who are 2 of our friends and past coworkers at Damascus, at least past coworkers for me. You guys still work with Conall. And then we went into a conversation about kind of our hero draft. So we talked about who, particularly in the arena of the NFL, football. I guess it wasn't just NFL, but football. And, Brad drafted Peyton Manning. Noah drafted Tom Brady, and I drafted Pat Tillman, a variety of them. We'll get into that later. And then we capped off the month with a conversation around a current event. Sophie Cunningham was kind of the main impetus of that conversation, really around objective truth, relativity. Where is a place for objective truth, and in particular, her ability to not shrink back, but to be kind of like a lion and to just let the truth out there. And then how that's kind of what the impact that's made in the culture. I don't know if you guys saw Enes Kanter got kicked out of a WNBA game last night, but or at the time of this recording.
Wait, hold on.
Out.
What happened?
So he was at a Chicago Sky WNBA game, and he was just wearing a shirt. The shirt just said woman, and it said noun, and it said an adult female or an adult biological female, something to that degree. And then I can't remember the WNBA player's name. Shocker, I can't remember her name. But she drives down, scores a bucket, and then stares him down and starts pointing at him and calling him all sorts of names. And then he stands up and I mean, he's like massive, you know, he's like 6'8", and he looks like a giant in the midst of all these women. And so he's just like hands out, arms out, like what? And then everyone's just like booing him. And then everyone's getting in between her and him. Like a fight was actually going to happen. And then they kick him out. He's like trying to be like, what did I do wrong? What happened? And they kicked him out of the game. So I haven't seen anything. I tried to look this morning for some like commentary, either like a post game interview from her or something that came out from him. And I didn't see anything, but yeah, it was kind of bizarre. So anyway,
I love that.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
You saw some of that too, Brad?
I did. Yeah. I was thinking about like, there's something about, controversy, you know, there's something about controversy that stirs hearts and stirs minds. And I was trying to think through actually when I first saw it, what is the right way to approach, and we can get into that, I guess, some in the episode today, but that was a big question I was approaching that episode we talked about, Sophie, with is what's the right approach in a world that's lost its mind in some ways. And I think that humor's always been a way, you know, and like we have to watch, especially as Christian men, where humor becomes mockery, right? We want to watch mockery. But there is a place to point out a humorous reality that like, hey, this is something people have known forever, and I'm wearing it on my shirt, and that becomes offensive because it's taking a stance. So yeah, I thought it was interesting. The controversy definitely sparked and hit my feed with a few different takes on it, you know?
Yeah,
I think that is what
sure.
it is. I think it's just mocking. I'm like, what is that? I don't know. I'm like, what is that helping? I don't know if it's helping anything, but it is funny. Like I sit here and I laugh at it. I'm like, this is hilarious, but I don't know if it's genuinely doing anything.
Can I ask you a sincere question, Noah? Do you just let it go? Is that what you think? Like, I don't know if I would have done what Enes Kanter did, but do you just let it ride, or do you point?
I'll say this: if I'm on the other end of that, like let's reverse it. Let's say that. I mean, it's kind of hard to reverse it, but let's reverse it. If some crazy, let's say a woman came to an NBA game and like was wearing some shirt. Let's say it was Caitlin Clark for the sake of the analogy, and she's super famous. Let's say that she kind of like, comes in the game and is like, women should play in men's sports. I think I would be like, I just don't think I'd pay attention to it. I think giving attention to it makes it way worse. Like now he can go home and be like, they kicked me out of a game for just being me. Like, it just, so I don't know if I'm Caitlin Clark or like, if I'm in that situation, I'd be like, no, I would just ignore it and like welcome the person. I'd be super welcoming, welcome the person, make them feel amazing. And then they're the ones who feel like an idiot. But that's what I would do personally if I was in the situation.
Yeah, it's curious because it probably would have been met with applause if it was an NBA game or something, you know, and there was a role reversal there. It's an interesting thing for sure. And I think without getting too far into a tangent there, I think to kind of bring it back, those are the kind of the 3 episodes that we hit of the hero, the screen, like the AI stuff was kind of the thing we hit in the long form interview. And then the Sophie Cunningham stuff with the more current event. And I think there's something I was reflecting on today as I was kind of thinking about. So that's like, that was the plan. The plan was to hit, you know, we did a hero draft and it was kind of cool to see how all that played out and why we chose people we did. The conversation with Gabe and Conall was just like haywire. Like it was one of those ones where I'm like, what the, like at certain points during this, I was like, what the hell is going on? It was also one of our longest episodes. Like, I don't know if you know that, but it was like cresting close to 2 hours. I think it ended up being about an hour 45 by the original recording. And then the Sophie Cunningham one, I think I was actually really amazed how that kind of springboarded us into a larger conversation as well. But that was the plan. So, what actually happened? I think after like looking backward on this, there was something that I was thinking about a memory that I had. And one of the memories I had early on in ministry was I was getting a lot of attention and kind of notoriety and affirmation for being someone who is a very bold individual. So like, that's why when I see Enes Kanter, it's like, I wouldn't necessarily do that, but I'm like, that's a bold move. Like I get really impressed when people will do bold things because it kind of speaks to something within my heart of like, yeah, I just toe the line, or like, I'm not one to toe the line. I'm like, if someone tells me I can't do something, I'm usually the person who pushes back pretty hard. But early on in ministry, there was this kind of affirmation that I was getting for kind of being a bold individual, doing some, like, whether it's praying with individuals or just an evangelization. And there was another person who was older than me that had, in a very similar light, been affirmed and had a lot of notoriety for a very similar kind of way of life. And I remember having a conversation where I was a little bit bashful with the individual about kind of what I was experiencing in my life. And the person kind of, I think, acknowledged it. It was like an older brother. And then just told me, he's like, I'm not afraid of bright people. Like, I'm not afraid of people who burn bright. And it was kind of one of these things where it was, in a certain sense, kind of a, we talk about these rite of passages where people can kind of like bestow something upon you. Like, in that moment, someone could have been very threatened and been like, I don't know what they would have said to me, but I was actually really encouraged by what this person said to me. And I didn't really know the person very well, but they were very kind to me. And in a sense, what they were doing was they were seeing a call that God had put on their life. They were seeing something that, they were living out kind of this thing that God had given them and doing it to the full. And then seeing it in somebody else and not being frightened by it. And instead actually being like, I'm not afraid of your brightness. Like, actually, we need people who burn bright. We need people who burn, on fire with what God has given them. And I think it was kind of when I look at all these episodes, it's kind of interesting because so much of these 3 episodes to me really kind of come down to like a God-given call or like a God-given dignity, a God-given like ability to burn bright. Like, I think about the hero draft, and we gravitated to 3 different individuals, like 3 very different individuals. Like, even though Manning and Brady are like incredible quarterbacks and for all intents and purposes, like easily top 10 quarterbacks, like all time, if not top 5. And, but they're very different how they carry their lives. But when you look at like, what is Tom Brady at his height? It was Tom Brady, right? When you think about who Peyton Manning could have been at his height, it was exactly who Peyton Manning was. Who Pat Tillman could have been at his height, like it was Pat Tillman. Like, you see this kind of unique achievement of being all that they could be, I think, is what I'm trying to say there in that episode. And then you're like looking to this episode with like for lack of a better word, I'm kind of gonna call it like this, like the screen versus like incarnation, because that was a big part of the conversation, was like AI, what do I do with like screens and being in the interweb and being on social media versus like the incarnational reality. And I think there was a big division, actually. There was a lot. I mean, I went through and re-listened to the episode where, Conall and I got after each other a little bit. Conall and Gabe disagreed. Like, honestly, all of us kind of disagreed. And kind of in reflection, I'm like, well, that kind of makes sense to me, that there's a unique way that how Sam is supposed to most fully live his God-given potential, right? And it's cool actually now to have this episode be released at the point in time it is, because Connell's actually really exploding on social media. Like, he's doing an incredible job in that sphere. He's getting a lot of traction. A lot of people are being benefiting by the messages that he's putting out there. And for me not to be threatened by that, like, I'm not sitting there like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I'm not accelerating with the follower count that he is, because he's actually, I mean, if I try to replicate what he was doing, it'd be so cheesy. Like, I would be like, you're a freaking idiot. But it works because Conall is doing exactly what Conall is supposed to be doing. Right. And same with like the 3. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, again, there's kind of like this God-given call. And then the last point here that I want to drive is just kind of this overarching kind of through line that I want to have for discussion today is, even Sophie Cunningham, it's like unabashedly kind of just being herself, even in that interview that we brought up last time where she was kind of pressed on the issue of, do you regret what you say, or do you want to take back what you said at all? And she's like, no, like this is what I believe. And I admire the heck out of it because it's her being most fully who she is. So I guess when I think of this month, I really want to kind of dive into a conversation, and we can kind of I want to hear your guys' reactions to what I'm thinking as I say all that. But it's like when you live most fully who you are, it's not like the same thing as like, oh, you're just living your truth, I'm living my truth. Like, we're all just living our own truths here. It's like who we are in relation to the objective truth, like God himself creating man out of a plan of sheer goodness, not out of need, but out of desire. And then implanting in us our own desires, that then when we achieve those desires, when we live most fully from those desires, those God-given desires, we magnify God. Like, I love the sweatshirts that we have from the shirt singers were on the back. It's that quote from St. Catherine of Siena where it says, you know, man fully alive, or it's not man most fully alive. That's a different quote, I guess. But it's if you are who you were created to be, you'll set the world on fire is what's on the back of the sweatshirt. But then there's other ones too, where it's like, man fully alive is the glory of God. And so, you know, when you think about that of just this, that's what I kind of think is the through line I want to kind of rest on here is like, when we think about what actually happened, I think this is the real fruit of the conversation is what does it look like when we live most fully alive? I'm curious what you guys think about that.
Well, can I ask a question? So something that I was kind of thinking of when you were talking, Sam, is just in order to answer that question, I think the question you first have to ask is, how do you even get there? Like, how do you get? And look, all these people are trying to figure it out probably still. Sophie Cunningham's trying to figure out who she is. Conall is, I hope he's listening. He's such a loser. No, I'm just kidding. But he's just trying to figure out who he is. Like, we're trying to figure out who we are. Everyone we just talked about, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, we're all trying to figure out who we are. But in order to answer that question, I'm like, what's the path to even get there? Like that's something that I've been asking myself, just as I've been in a time of just like learning more of who I am and what I have to offer this world. I think I've been asking the question, like, wait, how do I know, almost like twofold, like, how do I know I'm genuinely who I'm called to be? And how do I know that I'm actually living out all I'm called to be, and that I'm fully being myself and doing exactly what I'm supposed to do? Like that those questions kind of, I think, lead up to the question you just asked, Sam, because I'm like, I don't know if I could answer how to burn brightly if I don't even know what I'm supposed to be burning brightly as. And I think there's so many people in this world who are like, well, I'm just supposed to burn brightly, so like I'm just going to be whatever they end up just becoming like mirrors of other people or fakes, and because they're not themselves. So I don't know. I don't want to derail anything, but I think that's the questions that are coming to mind as I'm hearing you say that. Like, wait, how do I even get there? How do I get to be in a place where I could stand in front of a bunch of people and say, no, I think only women should play in women's sports, and I'm going to choose to stand by that even when I'm catching heat? Like, how do I become who I am almost? So I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think I'll give kind of my first blush, and Brad, I'd love to hear what you think. Is just, I think there's so much that comes down to what I kind of was speaking about of desire, right? It's like when you think about God creating us not because He needs us, but because He wants us, right? Out of a desire for us, and because of that, like, and then you just think about the power of like an omnipotent, omnipresent, forever God who from the beginning of all time created had us in His mind. Like it says it in the book of Jeremiah, right? Jeremiah 29, greater the plans I have for you, says the Lord, a future full of hope. And then He talks earlier about before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Like there's something about the fact that like God, who is so big, created every single one of us in a unique way, unrepeatable way, to reveal something about Him. And in so many ways, I think perhaps this has been like a more, I don't know if easy is the right word, but it's been something I've been very attuned to throughout my life, is just desire. Like, when there's something in your life that makes you come alive, and it doesn't, you think about what are the guardrails there? Because it's like, what if, being a drug dealer makes me come alive? It gives me a lot of money. It's like, okay, well, if it doesn't violate the laws of God or the rights of your fellow man, I think it's in play. Like if it's not a sin in the law of God, and you're not doing something to use somebody or to violate the rights of somebody else, and that's where you start to throw, okay, like that's why pornography is wrong. That's why embezzlement's wrong. That's why drug dealing is wrong. To be able, like, how do you live within those guardrails? And then in doing so, like, to be able to kind of, I think isn't it St. John Bosco maybe, who says, love God and do what you will. Like there's something about like, just love the Lord and pay attention to those. Cause frequently, I mean, just kind of give an anecdote. It's like Whitney and I just celebrated my birthday yesterday. So 32, the big 32. And
Sam, I didn't wish you happy birthday. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's okay.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you. You texted me about something else and I didn't say it. And I was like, thought about saying it, but I didn't. It's okay. And
I was trying. Keep going.
It's all right.
Sorry.
This is the and this is to all my Ohioans out there, the only two people from Ohio that wished me happy birthday yesterday were Brad and Ben. The only two people. Everyone else sucks. Okay.
Hey, you know what? I was checking in to see how things were going. It's even worse though that I was trying to check it out to see how things were going and not ask like,
you're asking how if I had that reel ready for yesterday.
No. Anyway, I thought I asked you how the concert was. Was that Saturday?
That was the follow-up question. It's okay. So anyway, the thing here though, guys, is that Whitney and I were reflecting at my birthday last night. So we went out to Texas Roadhouse and we got back home and we were sitting there and I was just like, it's kind of wild what happens in the course of a year. Like a year ago, I was sitting in Mohican Lodge with you guys, extremely distraught because I was like, I feel in my heart a desire to move back to Iowa. But that is at odds with everything I've known for the last 10 years. Like, and having to wrestle out that desire and like, do I leave Damascus or do I stay here? We just bought a house 2 years ago. And then I was like, and then you try to answer the question of what the hell am I going to do? It's like, I didn't even have a job, And then it's like, okay, being attentive to that desire, of obedient to that desire that again, did not, violate the laws of God or the rights of my fellow man. God began to work that plan out for me. So two months later, I meet the man who's going to offer me a job to move back to Iowa. And then 4 months later, I'm putting my house on the market and it sells like that. And it's not about like health and wealth. It's not, things aren't easy when you follow your desires here, but there's something about that where, and then moving back, it's funny. Like, Noah, you brought up kind of this idea of almost like mimicry. You have these people that you idolize or you kind of like. There's an attribute about them. I'm actually not opposed to that at all. Like, I think to the point where if you're just being a faker, I think we can tease that out a little bit more. But I think there's an importance to seeing something in someone that you want to, like, hey, I like that about that person. I'm going to take that on. Part of why I have a mustache right now is because I like Riley Green. It's because I've been listening to his music. I went to his concert. I'm like, and Whitney yesterday was like, hey man, this is like the cowboy phase of your life. I'm like, hell yeah, it is. I'm like, I'm going to rock this mustache. This is my cowboy phase. We're going to rock it for a bit. So it's funny to kind of pay attention to those desires. I guess what I'm trying to say is not to be flippant and just kind of doing whatever your gut tells you to do. But I think there is an importance to like being in prayer and being attuned to what the Holy Spirit's doing in your heart and in your desires, and then living them out as long as it's not like, if it lives within the realm of virtue. So anyway, that's my first gut. Brad, what do you think?
Yeah. The first thing that comes to my mind is that in order to know where to go, you have to know where you are. Right. So if you're on a GPS and you're like, take me to wherever, in order for you to actually have a route to get wherever you're going, where you are is really important because that's the starting point. And I think that when you were asking that question, Noah, I think the reason we can struggle becoming what we were called to be, becoming the sort of person that sets the world on fire, is for the exact reason you pointed out, that we don't know who we are. And I think the reason we don't know who we are is we have bought into a lie that to become the person I'm made to be, I have to fill all the voids. And then once I'm full, I'll understand who I am. When I actually think life goes in reverse, where actually it's about chiseling away the excess. That our life is much more like the statue of David than it is like a map that has a bunch of missing puzzle pieces that we have to put together. That it's this gift that we've been given, and as we chisel away the excess from the marble or whatever, we are revealed. And the only way I have found to do that in my life, I've tried a lot of different methods, is prayer. Is to go to the Lord and ask, what are the things in my life that don't have to be there? I mean, that's been where the deepest repentance in my life has happened. It hasn't been in failing in the eyes of man. It hasn't been in having an assignment and not following through on it. The greatest repentance I've ever had is when I'm with the Lord and he's like, why are you doing that? Like, that's about you, or that's about your ego or whatever. You guys, I'm sure, have had similar circumstances, but to answer your question, Noah, I think we have to go there. That if the real issue about men not knowing where to go is that they don't know where they're at, maybe it's that when they're trying to assess where they're at, they're focusing on the holes that they have to fill in instead of the gift of life they've been given and chiseling away at it. So what's revealed from there is actually the essence of God that was put in Brad, to harken back to your point, Sam, that God put something in me that he's never put in someone else and that he'll never put in someone else.
Well,
That's
and it's
super
cool
interesting.
when that does happen too, because even just kind of like bringing it kind of back to that conversation around our hero draft, it's like there's different marks of those individuals we talked about, right? So like when you think about Tom Brady, like why do we admire Tom Brady? It's because he had like a singularity, like a singular focus. Like he had that kind of, you know, Kobe Bryant, like Mamba mentality, like the Jordan
Hmm.
killer mentality. Like there was something about a
Mhm.
singularity of focus that in a lot of ways marked Tom Brady's life.
Hmm.
And you were really drawn to that, Noah. And for me, you know, when I think about Pat Tillman, what was it about Pat Tillman? It was like giving the ultimate sacrifice. Like it was something about him, like the unique kind of like burning bright moment of his life was like a sacrificial gift of himself, of like it's not about what the world wants or whatever, I'm going to do this. And
Hmm.
you know, Brad, it's like Peyton Manning is like was such in such a good way, like such a professional, well integrated person. Like
Yeah,
the
doing it the
fact that
right
he
way.
was not like not the fact that he like had has an amazing family life and was a really good quarterback, but also is incredible in his community, like a great community leader, right? The fact that you brought it up of the Indianapolis Children's Hospital is like named after him. And so
Hmm.
you kind of even see this of like in our conversations earlier of when you can kind of almost even use that as a I don't know, like what does your heart gravitate toward? I think is a really indicative thing about when you ask that question, Noah, of, you know, how do you even begin to do this? It's like maybe that's a really good conversation to have, because I think in some ways it's kind of encompassing. Like,
Hmm.
is your heart come alive by being kind of like the dog that's like just going after it? It's like I'm cutthroat. I'm like have this refined vision that everything else needs to step aside, and I'm like doggedly pursuing this thing. Are you drawn to like more of kind of like that sacrificial gift of like whatever, and then, or you know, I just think there's kind of an
Hmm.
interesting thing
Hmm.
of like what stories speak to your heart and make you come alive, is at least how I'm wired. Like, and that's why I get so jazzed up about story, and when I read stories of great individuals, it's like there's something about them that I want to that they did that I want to live in.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I think it's an interesting thing to be able to understand that question of like, what does burning bright even look like? I think is a great question to ask.
Well, and it's cool. I think so this is funny because this is literally sitting on my desk from we had our a year ago, Sam, you were at our staff retreat. We
Yeah.
just had it this past weekend or this past week, and it's literally sitting on my desk. Brad, did you make this? I don't know if you made it
I
or not.
did. Yeah, I made it.
Yeah, so literally there was a session called Irreplaceable, and
Hmm.
Brad like he kind of it was actually really cool because he gave it and he broke down three specific areas. So in order to know what you need to like what you're called, or in order to know, well, I'll just say this. First, you have to know, first of all, who you are, then what you're called to, then what you're called to do. So like you have to know who you are, then that informs what you're called to, and then what you're called to informs what you do. And in that order, like you have to live your life. And I have been just like rocked by that. I've been it's super profound to me because I'm like, oh my gosh. Like I'm starting to believe that. So Sam, I liked what you were saying there because I'm starting to believe that we are informed about who, obviously we are son and daughter, like we are here are sons of God, right? So we're first and
Hmm.
foremost sons of God, but that almost doesn't inform us anything other than the fact that we're loved and we're endowed with the grace of God. That's a beautiful thing. But if I heard that and it's like, well, Noah, like who are you? Oh, you're a son, you're a son of God, you're loved, and you like are experiencing grace. I'm like, sweet. What does that inform for me? Like
Hmm.
waking up other than how I'm supposed to feel and experience life. That's incredibly important. You have to start with that. But then after that, like especially as a man, it's like, all right, what do I do next? And I think I'm starting to believe like the idea of who God singularly made you, like as a unique, unrepeatable, irreplaceable person, that is informed by what you were saying, Sam. Like the experiences you have, the documentaries you watch, those different things, what speaks to you in that, and that
Hmm.
informs really truthfully like what you're attracted to, because maybe you are that thing, like in not in an identity way, but maybe that is a unique part of God's heart that you're supposed to display to the world. And I
Hmm.
think yeah,
Hmm.
looking at heroes and saying like, oh, there's something about me that comes alive when I see that person, and that kind of informs like, or there's a certain I was talking to a good friend of mine today, and he was like, if you would do this thing every hour of the day for free, it's probably what you're called to. And so almost
Yeah.
like who
Yeah.
you are begins to be formed there, and that explains what you're called to. And I'm going to kind of say a controversial thing, but I'm starting to believe, and as I've just gone through a lot of discernment in my own life, I don't know if we're called to anything specific. I think we're just, and by what I mean by that is, I don't know if like Brad's called to Damascus, or I'm called to Damascus, or Sam's called to Forge, or Tom Brady's called to the Patriots, or Tom Brady's called to win Super Bowls. I think we are called to something a little bit less
More
job
general.
specific and more general, in the sense of like, I am called to, and I'm making this up, this is not what Noah's called to do, but I am called to, well, I'll say what I'm called to do. I know in my life what I'm called to do is I'm called to bring the power of relationship to the world. I'm called to bring the power of being connected and in relationship. I know that that's like, connection is my thing, and that's what I'm called to do. So I know that. And then whatever I do, that gift needs to be given in whatever I'm doing. And I can have a desire for that thing, and it better come to life. So for me, it works out really well because I'm in a role where I do sales. Like, that's one of the most connection oriented things you could possibly do, is constantly be connecting with people and bringing them into something you've experienced. That's awesome. But I think I could do like about a million different things, because I know who I am is I am connection, right? Like I am, that's a unique way in which God's made me, is I connect really well with people. Then I know that that's the gift I have to give. So that's almost what I'm called to. Then following that, whatever I do, it's like, I felt really recently in prayer, like God's just been saying like, all right, now do whatever you want. Like Sam was saying, like St. John Bosco or St. Augustine, it's one of those, like, okay, now just love me and do whatever you want after that, as long as you're giving the gift of who you are to the world. And so it's been making me think, I'm curious to hear what you guys think about that. Like, what you do really doesn't matter. I don't think you're called to a specific thing. I think God shows who you are through the desires of your heart and who you're attracted to and what you're attracted to. And then it shows you kind of how you've been made. And then you're called to just give that gift. And as long as you're loving him in it and glorifying him, I don't know if he cares whether or not I'm a missionary or starting a business or running a men's ministry, whatever, or being on a podcast. I think he just wants me to give that gift to the world. So it might be controversial, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
I think that sequencing kind of proves your point, right? That like we live inside out, not outside in. So like I'm called from a place of stability in here to go out. The thing I was thinking about when you were talking, Noah, is it's as if we, especially as Christian men, what we understand is that we were made to actually help tell the story of the world around us. That we actually aren't called to have the world tell our story. Like, that's the false game we play, as we look out and we say, let's let all of them write the story about my life and I'll mold to the character they want me to be. No, I'm supposed to bring a character into the story of the world. That's why when we start in and we move out, that's what I was saying about the excess, is like, if you chisel away at the marble and you come up with David, when I was actually listening to a podcast recently by Father Gregory Pine, who is breaking down the practice of the presence of God by Brother Lawrence. And one thing he said in there, which he was quoting from a professor of Shakespeare, this Shakespearean professor once said, you don't judge Shakespeare, Shakespeare's writings judge you. That like you get it wrong when you read Shakespeare and you try to like assess it, because it's assessing you. Same thing with like the statue of David, right? You don't assess the statue assesses you. And that's almost the pinnacle of how we could live. That like it's just by me being Brad in the environment, it's bringing something to it that's calling people higher and calling people to do something. That's why I think if we cut away at the excess, something amazing happens. But man, I know that you had that handout, Noah, but that's why I wrote those in reverse order. I went 3, 2, 1 instead of 1, 2, 3. That we typically start with what you do, and then we start doing it. We're like, hey, I'm good at this thing, or hey, yeah, exactly. What you do is the first thing in our mind, and then we're like, oh, because I'm good at that thing, that's probably what I'm called to, right? Like we do this reverse order where it's, man, I'm doing this, I feel good at it. Okay, that must be what I'm called to, and that means this is the sort of person I am. Instead of actually going down and saying, oh, this is who the Lord's made me to be. So Lord, where do you want me to take that? Oh, wow. That actually, that touches on some desires I have, like you were saying earlier, Sam, or that touches on some passions of mine. I'd love to go do that. You mentioned relationship, Noah. For me, it's building things that outlive me. Like that brings me so much life to think about, that like things could go centuries beyond my own lifespan. some of those are relationships, some of those are organizations, some of those are other things. But that gives us this general orientation to call, and then just do it. And that's what you're great at, Sam. So I wonder what you think about what we're saying, but you're so good at doing the thing you set out to do, because it can't just stay a call. Because if it's just, hey, this is who Brad is, and I would like, I'm called to this thing, I can live in this kind of lost. I can be a lost boy in Neverland, right? That it's, I'm always potential. I'm never actualized. I just sit in, hey, I'm loved and I'm called to do this, but I never actually get out of the boat and do it.
Yeah, the action, or the and those are both important, right? The potential side of it is so critically important, which I think is kind of what we were just talking about, in a way of that. If you can kind of, if we're using this analogy of like a fire kind of like burning brightly, that's what adds fuel to the fire. Like there's a saying that I've heard that like motivation is like a bath. You have to like bathe in it every day. Like you have to be inspired by it. Like there's something, motivation isn't enough unto itself, right? But there is an element of like, that's why reading the books, doing the documentaries, whatever those things are, that like, yeah, I mean, there are things that inspire me that I'll never be that person, but like that aspect of who they are speaks to my soul. Like there's something about Sam that comes alive, and it's like adding fuel to that fire when I watch that individual or listen to that story or re-immerse myself in that thing. But then there's this dynamic, and I think it's kind of interesting, even in just kind of like the chronology of what we did throughout this conversation, throughout the conversations we've had this month, that I think are really important too, is that being a reality of like the potential. There are things that are going to try to dim your light. Like there are going to be things that are going to try to like oust your fire, that are going to try to oust you. And I think to be on the lookout for those, right? Like my mind was kind of going even to like the conversation we had with Gabe and Conall. It's like, we live in a culture that so doesn't know what it is right now, right? It's like everyone has to be online. Everyone's got to be, utilizing AI. Everyone's got to be like the culture is just so confused. Like it's dictating all sorts of different things. Like the political stuff doesn't help that either. And we're in political season right now, so there's all sorts of messages that are being thrown about. And if you don't know who you are, you're just getting yanked everywhere, right? There's just all sorts of stuff, and so you can almost become like schizophrenic. Am I supposed to be this? Am I supposed to do this? Or am I supposed to do that? And to your guys' point earlier of like living from that place of who you are and who God has placed those desires in is so important. But I think to be able to kind of begin to ask that question, and maybe it's more of just coming to a knowledge of like what is trying to dim your light, what is trying to really like suppress God's call in your life. Because I think and it's an important part of our life, right? Adversity. But those things we have to pay attention to those, because if they like persist, that potential never becomes actualized. Right. And so, I mean, I'm curious what you guys think about that as a part of like the actualization of like this burning bright, like, and maybe I'm curious if anybody willing to share a story even of like, something that's kind of been oppressive in your life and like getting through adversity in it, because I think that's something that speaks to the heart of man in so many ways. You either get defeated by the thing that's like oppressing you, or you overcome. Like you either overcome or you don't.
Yeah. I can share a story that's actually pretty easily tied into everything we're talking about, because it was at the retreat last week that I really was tipped off. The Lord just did something powerful in my heart. I was actually in a conversation with Nina. And for those listening for the first time, Nina's my wife. We have a little 2.5-year-old daughter named Eliza. And I was in a conversation with Nina maybe 3 months ago or something like that. And we were just talking about life and where we were going and what we were doing, what we were looking forward to. And she just made kind of like a side comment about how she just felt like some of my light had dimmed over the last year. And almost used those exact words. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but effectively just, hey, I've seen your light dim some. And at the time I received it well, because we were just in a place where I could feel, I don't know, not challenged or embarrassed by that fact. And I was like, yeah, I think that's true. And over the next 3 months, I was, well, you guys know, I mean, I'm in group with you guys. We have phone calls. We text back and forth. You guys could kind of feel me wrestling all these things out. But it was at the retreat last week where there was just a time of prayer where it was prompted from the front that if anybody felt disappointed, that they felt like the Lord was speaking a word, that if anyone was feeling disappointed in the Lord and in their life, that the community would love to pray for them. And I know that we've all had experiences like this, but for me, it was, I just knew that when that was said, I was at least one of the people in the room that was definitely for. And I was like, yeah, I'll take prayer for disappointment. And it was funny because the Lord drew a connection that I had never drawn before. And isn't it hilarious that like we can find ourselves to be so strong in areas? Like one of the areas I feel like I'm strong in is I can assess my life, evaluate it, and see what is causing what and begin working on the factors in it. And I had never put together that I had felt disappointed in my life over the last year. And as I started to put that together and people were praying for me, what the Lord was showing ultimately is that in my life, disappointment has led to bitterness. That the constant like feeling of disappointment had resulted in the constant acceptance of bitterness. And as I came out of that, I remember just thinking to myself, man, all the cliches, like instead of being bitter, what if I got better? Like, what if instead of holding people's feet to the fire who have invested in me, Noah and Sam and these brothers around me and people that have been leaders over me, instead of just feeling bitter and always holding their feet to the fire, what if I actually looked at how much they've invested in me and how much they do love me and how they do that imperfectly, sure. But as I started breaking off bitterness, what I realized is, man, there's actually still a really bright fire here. This isn't actually an existential crisis. This isn't like a fire that had been suffocated out or was slowly losing oxygen or was being covered in a blanket or doused with water. This was just a fire that over time had not been fueled with the kindling of gratitude, like the kindling of actually what I have been given, not focusing on what I have not been given. So anyway, I think that's a part of my story recently, Sam, and what you're saying, which is how in life can we actually see the light dimming and then put fuel back on it? I think some of it's find heroes, find idols. Some of it's find the right people speaking the right word that will challenge you or encourage you or whatever. For me, it was turning to the Lord and saying, Lord, I actually want to give you this part of my heart that I'm somewhat embarrassed by. Like, I don't want to be a man that's disappointed, and I don't even know what that really means. And then him showing me that through giving that to him, hey, I want to take some of this disappointment away, and by proxy, bitterness.
Yeah, I love that. Sorry for interrupting. I think
no, don't.
How do you know? So I just think this is super important because I think there's a ton of people, and sometimes I ask myself this question: how do you know, like, which one is telling you to move into an area that is new or stay? Like, for example, right here, we're talking about this, like Sam, literally a year ago, you were on this exact retreat, and I'm going to guess you felt like your fire might've been burning a little dim. You might've felt disappointed. You said you used the word distraught. Brad, you're having a similar experience. Your fire feels dim. You don't feel like you're burning brightly. You're feeling disappointed is a word you use, probably distraught a little bit too. I mean, I know that, how, Sam, you clearly moved forward, and I think you're in what you're called to do. Brad, you're moving forward in what you feel called to do. And I think I'm like, okay, so both of those are happening. I could sit here and say, okay, well, Sam just like wanted to get out of the hard thing. And like, so he like went, and now he's loving his life because the grass is greener. And Brad, or I could say to Brad, like, Brad, well, you're actually just like, you're just sticking in the thing when really like you shouldn't fight through it. You should get out of there so your fire can actually burn bright. Like those are two things that can happen. So how do I understand, like, okay, you guys had a similar experience and went in two different directions. How do, and I think there's a lot of guys that are just sitting there like, okay, I could go off and become a missionary, or I could go off and be in the secular world, and my fire, I might be in the secular world and my fire feels dim. I might be in the missionary world and my fire feels dim. Those are just two categories. There's a billion other categories. How do I know what decision to make? Like, how do I know, like, okay, this is actually how my fire is going to burn the brightest in this area of my life? Does that make sense?
What do you think? What do you think, Sam?
Yeah, That's a great question. I just picked up this book for the
Yeah.
first time in a long time. I don't even know if we actually read this all the way through. Brad, Noah, and I were in a book study together. And this book is called The Virtue Driven Life. If you're just following along on audio, The Virtue Driven Life by Father Benedict Groeschel, who is one of the founders of the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal. And the book is all about virtue. And the reason I picked it up and kind of smiled through that question you were sharing, Noah, is because so much of virtue is the means between two extremes, right? So there's this, and I bring this up all the time, is like you have these kind of continuums of if a counteracting vices would be like cowardice on this end, where you never do anything with your life and you're just constantly afraid and you never make a decision. Analysis paralysis is right here. And on the other side is like rash boldness, where anytime a decision comes your way, you're like, F it, let's do it. YOLO, I'm just going, go for it, you know? And like those are contradicting in a way, right? Like cowardice, you just never go anywhere. Rash boldness, you also never go anywhere because you're just constantly just firing, right? And in the middle of that, like what does actual virtue look like? Actual virtue looks like fortitude. Actual virtue looks like doing the thing you know you're supposed to do at the right time, in the right way, and in the right moment. And I think within this realm, like this question particularly, and I think it's such a astute observation of kind of, and thank you to the Holy Spirit for bringing this back, because I think this is such a cool conversation to have of like, yes, very unique thing, very similar things that happen in some ways in the same place, different fruits.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where I'm trying to go with it, is the fruit. So what is the fruit of the conversation? And I think
Mm-hmm.
we live in a world that is obsessed with immediate gratification. We live in a world that is obsessed with immediate results. People get frustrated when you have to work for stuff, right? You want the six pack, you want the strong arms, you've got to change your diet, and you've got to work. You got to work out. Like you can't keep doing the same stuff you always do. People get frustrated when Amazon Prime doesn't show up tomorrow, when you don't get
Mm-hmm.
like when Claude runs out of its space for you for a given day, because we want answers right now, right? And I think we have to be able to observe what is the fruit that comes from a time of prayer or from a moment, and not even just like the immediate fruit, but it's like, what is the long-term fruit? Like, what is it in the weeks and the months? And so to your question, Noah, like, how did I know? It's because the long-term fruit from even after that retreat for me last year, it was continued homesickness. It was continued discontent. It was continued just feeling out of place. And then when I began to move in a direction, and I began to seek and what I perceived was a door that I could try to walk through. That was one of the things that a spiritual director told me, was like, if you feel like the door is open, like try to walk through the door. Like we can trust that the same spirit that closed the ships going to Phrygia and to Asia for Paul and the early apostles,
Mm-hmm.
the Spirit will prevent you from doing the same thing, right? But it's being able to be attentive to what the fruit is. So ultimately, the fruit led to me leaving my job and starting a new life in Iowa, and I've been grateful for it, because it's been, the long term fruit has been evident, and I think it was a well discerned moment. Like I'm very proud of that moment, because I think that time was probably the most well discerned season of my life. But
Mm-hmm.
Brad, I mean, to speak to your point, it's like you're probably experiencing a similar thing. It's like the fruit is speaking for itself. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
What your thoughts are?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tying back a little bit to what you were saying earlier, Noah. Like, I don't think that I don't think the fruit for me is that I feel like I have to do something now. Like the fruit for me is that I feel more free, not less. I feel like I get to do whatever, not that I have to do anything. And I think that that freedom is what I'm hearkening to, that as I got rid of bitterness, I feel free. I don't feel forced in one direction or another in reaction. Instead, I feel like I can give a response to the different things in my life and what I feel drawn to and called to and what I want to build and how I want to spend my time. And so that could be a decent litmus test for anyone listening. If you're going through a season where you realize, hey, I've been doing a thing, and obviously vocation's a different story, because if you're in vocation, we can talk vocation in a different way. But like if you're in a location or you're in an occupation that you're discontent with, or that you've grown cold with, or that you've been frustrated with, or you feel like you've been bitter about, giving that to the Lord is the first step always, because he's going to do better with it than you will. And then the second step I would say is see, once you give that to him, where the freedom begins to take you. I love that example of setting out to sea, Sam. Like, where are the winds at in my sails? Like, and what are they driving towards as I get that freedom? And I think that you can begin taking prudent steps once you start feeling that wind. And I think, to Sam's point, the Lord will make it clear when he wants to redirect. But just the Lord in the freedom kept drawing Sam's heart to, Iowa, men's ministry, like in that way. For me, at least right now, the wind has gone. What we've done at Damascus in the last 10 years is unbelievable, and almost no ministry ever does it. And I'm really grateful to have been a part of that, like incredibly humbled. I know my weaknesses, and that's awesome. And that's really, does that make sense? So I just think like, my point would be, if you're in a season where you're wrestling something out like that, the first move is to give it to the Lord. The second move is to ask if freedom is present. If it's not, stay with him until it is. And once freedom's present, start talking to him about what you get to do instead of what you have to do.
If I could put both of what you're saying together, because I think you guys said two different things, but it's the same thing. I think what I'm hearing is like, and I can relate to this in other times of really big discernment. I think what I'm hearing, because Sam, I think you nailed something like courage and fortitude, so important in this conversation. And then Brad, you nailed something really important, which was freedom and kind of like freedom and peace. And I think when I go back to the moments in which I made a massive decision, what it felt like was this: I am making a very almost risky decision that is causing me to be very courageous and stepping out into the deep, into the unknown, into something that I do not know where it's going to go. And yet I feel incredibly free and peaceful in doing it. I think that is like the epitome of healthy discernment. It's like, this thing is going to require a lot of courage because it's scary. Yet when I'm stepping into this, I don't feel anxiety. I don't feel the weight of heavy stress. I don't feel discontent and uncomfortable. I kind of just feel like I'm on a lazy river in a way. Like I am like, the way I would describe it is like when you're at a water park. It's like going down the water slide is scary and insanely fun. And I think that's like the best way of describing it. So I think that's what I'm kind of hearing. And I agree. Like when I've been in those moments, it feels like I'm going down a water slide. Like, okay, this is scary. I don't know where this water slide is going, but I know that it's going to take me where it needs to go because I am trusting God in this. And there's just like a peace and a freedom, yet it's scary and it takes a lot of courage.
And I think that the free fall slide is a better example than the lazy river for sure, because it's
for sure.
There's an element of I mean, fear actually might be present. Like I was not actually like completely completely devoid of fear when I left Damascus, because there's a lot of unknowns. Like how is my health insurance going to work? What is this benefits package going to look like? Where am I going to live? But there was a confidence. I think that's the key difference, is there's a confidence of moving, like in the movement forward. And I think kind of the last piece, I guess, that I want to introduce before we kind of bring the conversation to a close, I think is really important kind of off of what you're sharing is, so we've talked about like stoking the fire, right? So there's this kind of, stoking the fire and that like through the stories and the desire in your heart, acknowledging what's trying to dim my light. What are the things that are trying to come under attack? And then when you get to that point of resolution of like, I refuse to dim, like I'm going to step over the line. Like, I think that's the last piece here is like, I refuse to succumb to whatever the outside pressure. Like there's this resolve. I think Brad, you and I are both speaking to it in different ways. There's a resolve that I think is so critically important within our heart of men, as men, to make a decision and to be like the Lord who sets his face like flint to Jerusalem, right? He has a resolve. This is where I am headed. This is what I am doing. I refuse to dim. And even just in the conversations we've had over the last month, like Sophie Cunningham refused to dim, right? Like she says the things, gets challenged about it, doubles down on the comments. Like there's something about being able to refuse to dim. Like I think it's so critically important here, and to ask that question of like, what does it look like refuse to dim. And I think part of it, you have to be willing to not necessarily be at peace with all people too, right? Like I kind of jokingly said it earlier, but there's reality to the fact that there were some people that were not very happy with me when I left, right? There's reality to the fact that like friendships that I had some of them don't exist anymore. And truthfully, and part of that is because I made a decision, right? And you think about how that thing extrapolates out further. Even just human nature, like we can tease this out a little bit, but I'm even just thinking about, I've been thinking about this recently just because I've lived in the suburbs in a way that I haven't in like a long time. Like the people living in peace is even kind of a very interesting thing, right? Like, there's this false peace, this false harmony that we can experience where as long as you don't talk about your political views or things like that, we talked about that in the last episode, you're fine. But as soon as you start talking about like, you start flying the trans flag out in front of some of your house, or you fly the like the American, like the just the Old Glory out in front of your house. Yeah. Suddenly it's World War II. Right. And there's this kind of thing that I want to draw to of just even a remark of like, even throughout human history, like tribes were relatively small, like, and tribes, tried to kill each other a little bit. Like there's an element,
not even a little bit, a lot of it.
Yeah, no, they did. Right. I mean, you think about the Native Americans, like they try to kill each other, but there's something I think I wonder if like within human nature too, of you have to be able to accept the fact that when you step over the line and you have that resolve, that you have to be okay that if people aren't going to like you or care for you, it's about maybe we can figure this out, but it's not about living your truth or like they're just living their truth. They're doing their own thing. It's about like you being most fully alive. And there's a promise there in scripture of the world will hate you, right? I think sometimes we sugarcoat the stuff, and I'm starting to feel this a little bit in the world is like, the world will hate you because they hated me. The world will hate you because they hated me. And it's like, okay, if I'm living who I'm most fully supposed to be, like having to be okay with the fact that I might not be liked by people. And so I don't know, I think that's a part of like being able to refuse to dim. Like when you make that resolve, you've got to be okay with the ramifications too of people hated Tom Brady. People didn't like Peyton Manning. People don't like Sophie Cunningham. There's a desire, like when you living, those are superficial examples, but when you're living that out, like you have to be okay with the ramifications that come with burning bright too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's a universal principle there, actually, Sam. That's that nothing comes without cost. So good luck defaulting through your life and thinking that that's not going to cost you something. It's going to cost you every adventure you could have had. It's going to cost you all the potential you could have realized. Or if you go after something, you will by nature be offering up and forfeiting all the other things you could have done, right? Like Sam, you were offering something up to go do something else, right? Like as I stay at Damascus right now, I'm forfeiting things that could be otherwise. Nothing you do in your life comes without cost, and it's a lie to think anything else. So if you think you're defaulting through life and it's not going to cost you things, it's obviously going to cost you things. If you think you're going to go into a new horizon like you did, Sam, and it's not going to cost you some things, it's definitely going to cost you some things. If you think that you're going to stay with the thing you've been doing for a decade like I am, and you don't think it's going to cost you some things, it's going to cost you some things. The question isn't, is it going to cost you? The question is, what is worth the cost? And you only know that when you're with him. You only know that from hearing the Lord tell you who you are and what you're called to. And then you're like, that's worth the cost. I'll pay that. And that, I just think, to your point, Sam, if you're going to burn brightly, there's going to be a cost. There's a cost to us recording our actual opinions on here. How many episodes are we in? We're 30 some episodes in, and we're still figuring out what's it like to actually say what we think, because there's a cost. And I don't even know what I think half the time. Me saying the things is me figuring out what I think most of the time. So there's no getting through life without cost. And in fact, your life is going to cost you your life, because you'll die. And so I think that make moves in confidence. Confidence is the antidote to the cost. When you operate with faith, con fide, I'm willing to pay the cost. Jesus was willing to pay the cost because he operated confidently in his call. He knew it was worth it because he knew what he was called to. And we'll know what's worth it based on what we're called to. But in order to do that, we have to chisel away, get to who we are, and work inside out instead of letting it come to us outside in.
Mm-hmm. Very well said.
I love that.
Yeah, that was great. That was a great word.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I just real quick, I just think the frictionless piece is just so important. Like, Sam, there's no way that in the decision, like it was probably so exciting to go home. And at the same time, it was probably hard to walk in and tell people who love you and work with you, like, hey, I'm leaving, right? Like that you got cut on the way out, right? And that's natural because again, you're a great yes comes by way of serious no's. And I think that that's just super important to realize is like a great yes comes by way of super serious no's. And so I love what you're saying there, Brad. And I think too, at the same time, like a fun thing that might be worth thinking about is when you're faced with two different things coming down the pike, like two different decisions, maybe think about, or if there's a decision that you're figuring out and you're currently in a position and you're discerning whether or not to jump to that next thing. I think a fun practice and exercise to try is think of yourself doing the opposite, or I guess put yourself in both scenarios and notice how you feel. Like, do you feel like, Sam, for your example, I am sure that you looked at Iowa and you're like, okay, I think I'm called to this. And then you probably looked back and been like, okay, in the situation, been like, okay, wait, if I don't go to Iowa, how would it feel to stay here? And I'm sure you probably felt miserable. Like that thought probably felt miserable to you. And I think misery is like it might be a good like litmus test.
It's a motivation.
Like, yeah. Like if I stay in this thing, what is my thought? Like, do I go to Iowa? What happens if I go to Iowa? How do I feel when I'm like picturing myself there? Picture myself if I stay in this place for another year. What are those feelings? And like that might also help you jump as well. So misery might be a good litmus test.
I did almost the exact same thing. It's crazy. I had a journal and I think I have it still here in my drawer, is wrote down like reasons to stay in Ohio, reasons to move to Iowa. And so much of the reasons to stay in Ohio were just for community, like people, friends that I have. And only 2 of those people wished me happy birthday yesterday. Isn't that crazy?
I repent.
But they're really, it's funny though, because like I think it speaks to a deeper reality that you should always follow the call, because ultimately on the right-hand side for that of Iowa was my call. And so much of what was on the left-hand side for staying in Ohio was people. And so if you do things because of people, you're going to be disappointed. Like if you do it out of fear of what are they going to think? Like I had people on that list that I deeply love, deeply admire, but I haven't spoken to in 6 months. And so it's like, you cannot do things because you think someone's going to be disappointed in you, or because you think someone is going to be upset. Like even if they are, it doesn't matter. Your life is too short and the impact you could have with your life is too great to make decisions just because you think people might react some way to you. And quite frankly, they might. And if they do, we're going to die anyway. Like I think it's important to keep the meta scale involved. Like we are all going to die. And after we die, people forget about us very quickly. And even in the immediate, like for 2 to 3 weeks, was there some awkwardness with some of the people that I left behind? And that like I felt, yes, but guess what? They don't think about me anymore. And I don't really think about them anymore sometimes too. So I think that's such a great point of the conversation here and we kind of covered what was the plan? What were these 3 episodes about? What was the fruit of it? What really happened in my mind and your minds over the course of the last 3 weeks? What was the real fruit of the conversation? And I think the last place we want to end is just, what can we learn? This is where we kind of bring in the idea of the principal objective. What's the resolution? What's the thing that we want to kind of bring in from this episode? And I think if you're following along, encouraging you to do the same thing, whether it's something that the 3 of us say that we want to resolve to do, or whether it's something that you've even thought about during this time that differs from what we have. But I don't want to put anybody else on the spot here, so I can start us off. Is my principal objective? I have always been a very passionate individual, which sometimes can get me into trouble. I was being reminded of a distinct time when I was in college, like junior year of college, and I was struggling pretty mightily with lust. Like there was a particular through my phone. And I remember, like, I've always kind of had a burn the boats type mentality. And so I took my smartphone out into in a pillowcase and just like railed it on the phone, like just like on the ground, just like beat it over and over and over again until it just stopped working. And then I got a Nokia flip phone. And like, did it solve my issue? No, didn't really solve my issue. But it was like there was a movement there, a resolution of like doing a radical thing that created a movement, created momentum, and it led to me going to counseling and seeking help and being vulnerable with people in my life that eventually ended up leading me to greater recovery and that experience in my life. But I think that came to my mind because particularly just around being like having that burn in the boats type moment. Like I'm coming off of 2 weeks of vacation. I was drinking a lot of drinks, sitting out in the sun, swimming in the pool, and I want to be able to just burn the boats. And so I'm gonna be aggressive in my call, specifically with working out again, getting up to my alarm. That's where I'm at. Is I need to recommit to the basics of getting up to the alarm, working out, and I'm going to do that through kind of a burn in the boats approach.
Love it. Yeah, I think for me, I am really convicted by both the peace that I'm feeling in my heart, but also the cost that I know comes with anything that we do. And so I would really love to write out what exactly I know right now from the Lord that he's calling me to, kind of in the general sense you were talking about, Noah. And then I want to get really granular with him and writing out what I know to be the cost of that, to not leave the unspoken, but actually like, hey, Lord, here are the things I'm feeling really convicted that you're calling me to. And here's what the cost of me going in those directions is undoubtedly going to be. And I think just being really sober and honest with him and, and beginning to build metrics in my life around that. I'd love to do that for the next month. I just think it's where I'm at. It fits as a good next step, but I don't think I often actually sit with him and look him eye to eye, if I could say it that way, and just go, hey, I know this is the cost of it. And I know you know that too. And I'd love to hear what you think about that as much as what I think about it.
Yeah, I think for me, I love that. I think for me, what I'm kind of looking at here is just that I think a series of courageous small steps leads to the ability to make the courageous big step. I think a series of small steps of diligence and hard work and getting in the mud creates opportunity for you to truly make one big step to get into the mud. And I think I'm looking at my life right now. I have a newborn. I have a wife that just had a newborn. And I think I'm looking at a lot of small areas of courage and a lot of small areas of getting in the dirt and doing the hard thing. Like right before I got on here, there was a moment where I was, it was 7:45. We were about to jump on here in an hour, and my newborn was crying, and I was like holding her, and I knew usually like if I can get her down in 10 minutes, I'm like, cool, everything's good. And it was like 20 minutes, and I'm like, oh, I could just like give her to her mom because she may not be hungry, but she'll definitely eat. And if she eats, she'll fall asleep. And then we both are free and I get out of this. And I kind of like looked inside our window and I just saw my wife like doing some things that she really wanted to do. And I'd been working all day and not really with our newborn. And it was this moment of like, okay, this is just a small way for me to just continue to walk laps in my backyard and just walk those laps for the next 40 minutes until I have to jump right on here with you guys, because that's just going to love my wife. And it's my small way of stepping in the mud today. And it's so small, like that's nothing. But it was a beautiful opportunity for me to be like, okay, I'm not going to take the easy route out so I can like go and just lay there and do whatever I want. I'm going to actually just take 45 more laps so that my newborn can fall asleep and my wife can get an hour to herself. And I think I say all of that to say like, I think there are a couple areas I can identify in my life right now where I need to make a courageous small step and a get in the mud small step in order to just continue to make that a more familiar reality in my life so that I can start taking some of the bigger steps as well. So there are a few things that come to mind, and I think I want to attack those mightily.
Love it. Good stuff, guys. Well, this is Modern Man, and we exist to rediscover and redeem the heart of man in the modern world. If you have not yet subscribed, liked, or followed, please do that and join us again next week as we release our next episode. God bless you guys. We'll catch you later.
Peace.
Peace.